Hi, welcome. I'm trying to learn histology. Today, healing capacity of tissues, healing of tissues. And after we've done that, we're going to do leg injury prevention training. And if you participate in leg injury prevention training, that is at your risk. We did this text a couple of times on the tissue repair, but we want to go now through it and look for what tissue we name here some things exactly for capacity of tissue repair. And if you have a good answer to some type of tissue, we're going to make a little video or own presentation in which we answer in for that tissue. That is how the capacity is of the repair. Tissue repair is a process in which worn out, damaged or dead cells are replaced. New cells originate by cell division from either the stroma, the supporting connective tissue, or the parenchyma cells that constitute the tissue's or organ's functioning part. So either from the stroma part, the structure part, which is the structure of the organ, or the parenchyma part, which is the part which is doing the function of the organ. There is the cell division happening and that replaces worn out, damaged or diseased cells. In adults, each of the four basic tissue types, epithelial, connective, muscle and nervous, has a different capacity for replenishing parenchymal cells lost by damage, disease or other processes. Epithelial cells, which endure considerable wear and tear, and even injury in some locations, have a continuous capacity for renewal. Okay, epithelial cells have a continuous capacity for renewal. That's what we want to say. In some cases, immature, undifferentiated cells, called stem cells, divide to replace lost or damaged cells. For example, stem cells reside in protected locations in the epithelium of the skin and gastrointestinal tract to replenish cells slaughtered from the apical surface, and stem cells in red bone marrow continually provide new red and white blood cells and platelets. Now, is that now part of the epithelial cells? In other cases, mature differentiated cells can undergo cell division. So in other cases, mature differentiated, the stem cells were undifferentiated. In some cases, immature, undifferentiated cells called stem cells. Now, in other cases, mature, differentiated cells can undergo cell division. Examples are hepatocytes, liver cells, and endothelial cells and blood vessels. So if we mention now by the mature differentiated cells, the hepatocytes and the endothelial cells for the liver and the blood vessels. What use would be the mentioning of the stem cells be if it would not be used, at least in part, for the epithelial cells? So do we have together what we can say about epithelial cells? Epithelial cells, I guess that is somewhere in the skin, endure considerable wear and tear and even injury in some locations. Have a continuous capacity for renewal. That is the first thing we get at. Continuous capacity for renewal. In some cases, immature and undifferentiated cells called stem cells divide to replace lost or damaged cells. For example, stem cells reside in protected locations in the epithelium of the skin and gastrointestinal tract to replenish cells slaughtered from the apical surface, and stem cells in red bone marrow continue to provide new red and white blood cells and platelets. But red and white blood cells and platelets are not needed in the epithelia. If I guess right, it is skin or in the skin. Let's read on to the next thing. Maybe we understood. In other cases, mature differentiated cells can undergo cell division. Examples are hepatocytes, liver cells, and endothelial cells and blood vessels. What could we say about hepatocytes, liver cells? Not that much. I would guess that they have also a continuous capacity for renewal, all listed under one. And that it happens there through mature differentiated cells who undergo cell division. Let's see on. Some connective tissues also have a continuous capacity for renewal. It's a lot reading between the lines for making a statement. Hepatocytes do that because of that. Let's see on. Some connective tissues also have continuous capacity for renewal. One example is bone. Okay, bone has a continuous capacity for renewal. which has an ample blood supply. Other connective tissues, such as cartilage or fibrous connective tissue, can replenish cells less readily, in part because of smaller blood supply. We could mention that somewhere. Maybe, I think it's an important reason. Maybe we're going to do it as a singular video somewhere. I'm going to say one reason, because of the lesser blood supply. But cartilage is slower replenishing. Muscle tissue has a relatively poor capacity for renewal of lost cells. Existing cardiac muscle fibers cannot divide to form new fibers. So existing cardiac muscles cannot divide to form new fibers. Even though skeletal muscle tissue contains stem cells called satellite cells, they do not divide rapidly enough to replace extensively damaged fibers. Smooth muscle fibers proliferate to some extent, but they do so much more slowly than the cells of epithelial or connective tissues. Nervous tissue has the poorest capacity for renewal. Although experiments have recently revealed the presence of some stem cells in the brain, they normally do not undergo mitosis to replace damaged neurons. Discovering why this is so is a major goal of researchers seeking ways to encourage repair of damaged and diseased nervous tissue. Now I'm seeing a problem more and more. Now where we went on with the approach where we look exactly for one thing and what is one side of it, and take it as a fact. It's not so much so directly to say it directly as a fact. We could say, of course, nervous tissue has the poorest capacity for renewal. Almost no one. There is research that maybe something is possible. We could say skeletal muscle tissues have stem cells in them called satellite cells. But they do not divide rapidly enough to replace the extensively damaged fibers. They have poor, basically. Muscle tissue relatively poor. And cardiac muscle fibers cannot divide to form new fibers. It doesn't really make sense to say that as information like that. And to say it all together doesn't really work now, where I see that it doesn't work in detail. Which means we haven't looked closely enough, and the text seemed like information to singular things, but it was more an overview. Without giving directly individual things which are not seen as a singular thing enough. In other words, we cannot do a video about that as different things. This is what I see right now. The text was not made for that. The text is for giving an overview overall of different types of tissue repair. Not individually bad thing, but maybe we're going to do one video where we're going to say that one reason why cartilage does not repair so good is the little blood supply. I'm thinking if that is useful. I think it's an interesting fact, so I think it's kind of useful. It would make sense to do it in a video about cartilage or muscle as its own. But I think just this one fact, with one little thing, the blood supply is lesser, what is the word for it? Poorer. Is a very interesting fact. Because it's basically just an infrastructure fact. Would be another question. Basically, when the follow-up question to it, just concentrating on one question. Would it now work if blood supply would be externally improved? Would have a cartilage even the possibility to use more blood if it would be delivered? It doesn't really seem like it. It would be interesting to know about the blood vessel structure of bones and of cartilage. I don't think bones have a lot, but they have an ample blood supply. No, I don't know what the word ample means. But I think that one thing is enough to think about it, and we should take that one thing. Some connective tissues also have a continuous capacity for renewal. One example is bone, which has an ample blood supply. Other connective tissues, such as cartilage or fibrous connective tissue, can replenish cells less readily, in part because of smaller blood supply. Okay, we're going to say bone has a continuous capacity for renewal, and one reason why cartilage is less ready, we're going to try to use the same words because it doesn't really work to read in between the lines, so we try to say exactly that. Has a lesser or less readily replenishing process because of a smaller blood supply. I'm going to start the camera up a second. less readier, replenishing. Bones have a continuous capacity for renewal. Cartilage has a less readily possibility for replenishing of cells for one reason. I'm going to do it again. Bone has a continuous capacity for renewal. One reason why cartilage is less ready to replenish its cells is that it has a smaller blood supply. And that is according to Gerard Tortoga, etc. Sandra Gabrowski's Principles of Anatomy and Physiological book, page 133, but this is now medical advice. Awareness of the camera. And that was histology. Oh, histology was it? If you were here for histology, you can go directly to the next part of histology. If you were here for leg intervention training, we have 4 minutes less. So if you stay and participate in the leg intervention training, then it's relatively honest. Standing good on the leg, and this will give you other front and twist. And take the other leg and swing it to the side and front. Right. And now bring the foot in front and back. And the other leg, bring it in front and back. And now, bring one leg up, breathe in, out to the side, again in, out and down, the other leg up, breathe in, out to the side, again in, out and down, and the direction buoy, leg up, arms up, and go to the side with the arms, and out on the other side. And down. And the other leg up. Over to one side. To the other side. And so out. And now go with the leg over to one side and the hands over to one side. And change. Down and with the other leg out to one side, leg over to one side. Out over. And down. And now, one leg up, and bring the knee up and to the side. And the other leg up, and bring the knee up and to the side. And now, the preceptor. This exercise can go onto the knee. Stand good, turn over to that leg, get down into the knee, over to the outside, up again. And again, stand good, over to that leg, go down, the other side. Stand good on the other leg. Go down, turn over, turn down, turn over. And again, stand good, turn over, go down, turn over, and up. And now the clock with the exercise can go again out of the knee. So go in front with the heel through the 90 minutes interval is off the dial of clock. And the other knee goes every time down. And with the other leg, 12 o'clock. And half past 1 and 3, and half past 10, 9 and half past 7, 6 and half past 4 and 3. And now the pipette. Do this exercise not if you're pregnant. So stand good on one leg, the other heel with the heel onto the ground, the other foot with the heel onto the ground, lift the heel off the ground and bring it again up. And on the other side, heel onto the ground and lift the heel off the ground, place it again on the ground. Just the movement of the hips. And to do the next exercise, when we don't have time, let's do this just a stand, leg up and down. And the other leg up and down. And let's do the whole leg in and out. And the other leg in. You can do a camel. Down with the whole body, but you can do also the horse rest onto the step. And with the other leg in. Now, legs wide apart, breathe in and go down. And breathe again out. And in. Out. Breathe in across the legs. And breathe in out. With force. leg injury prevention training. I thank you very much, and until next time.